Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the Savvy Stylist Podcast. I am your host, Amy Walker. If this is your first time listening, welcome. We are in the thick of the Unleashed series where we are bringing all sorts of conversations related to the beauty industry, but really shifting your perspective on how to be successful, how to avoid burning out, and how to diversify inside of this industry. And today I am super excited, you guys, to introduce to you our guest. Dayna and I connected online, and the more we got talking, the more we realized like our stories are so similar. It is a little bit freaky, to be honest. And because of that, we have connected so massively. So Dayna is a former top stylist and ambitious entrepreneur who didn't just build a business, she built a freaking empire, you guys, through multiple different methods. But behind all the success was consistent hustle over productivity and the pressure to keep proving herself, which eventually led to burnout. A major wake up call that inspired a complete 360 in her life. Dayna now helps ambitious women break free from that cycle, create lives and businesses that feel alive, fulfilling, and true to who they really are and how they truly desire to feel. Welcome to the podcast, Dayna.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. This is going to be such a good conversation. Dayna and I were chatting before we pressed record, and I was like, okay, hold on. We're getting like so spicy already. So many good things are coming up. We've got to just dive in and get talking. And so, Dayna, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I'm super honored to be here and to be a guest on your podcast. It is wild how we connected. And just every time we talk, like we even have daughters with the same names. Like
Isn't it
it's
wild?
it's wild, right? So I have been in and out of the beauty profession for the last 20 years. And I say in and out because there were seasons of my life where my littles were really little and I had opportunities to build online businesses and do different things that allowed me to be the mom that I wanted to be, and also earn an income. And then things shift and they pivot and they evolve. And somehow I always end up landing right back in the beauty world. So I'm a mama, I'm a girl mama. I have been married for 13 years and I have been one of those people that has always been a little bit delusional. I've always had big dreams, big vision, big goals, right? I can remember being in the beauty world right back to the beginning, being at the beginning of my career in an apprenticeship and thinking, I can't wait to be on stage and I can't wait to be training and I can't wait to be educating and leading. And back when I was younger, I didn't really understand what that meant, that drive to be a leader and to mentor and I couldn't articulate that, but from a very young age, I've always just had big dreams and big vision. And I've always been that person that people are like, dude, like you need to chill a little bit, are you ever satisfied? And so that's kind of where our conversation even begins today, right? Because that need to always be proving, I guess, if you want to say it that way, led me to a complete and utter burnout where I question every part of who I am. But without that, like I'm just in a place in my life where I have so much fulfillment and satisfaction. And so I'm somebody that really believes that things are happening for us and not to us. And so I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I literally just wrote a post yesterday about if I knew all the things that I know, like if I knew it all then, what I know now, would I have done things differently? And my answer was like, no, I needed to grow through all of those things and learn all of those lessons to be able to now be like, okay, this is the vibe, this is the space, this is what my soul truly desires to be doing. So it's so yeah, it's so interesting that you say that.
Mhm.
So let's talk about burnout for a second because I've been there, you've been there. Everything I'm reading online in any type of beauty industry forum of any sort is about like, oh my gosh, I'm so burnt out. What are some tips to avoid burning out and how do I deal with this? And oh my gosh, now I'm burnt out and I don't know what to do and I'm leaving. Do you think that this was as prevalent of a thing like 20 years ago when you and I started in the industry as it is now?
I feel like that's a loaded question. And the reason I feel like that's a loaded question is, when I started in the profession, I was like, I don't know, 19 years old, 18 years old. I had not a care in the world. I didn't have, a husband. I didn't have children. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have all these responsibilities. I didn't have the weight of the world on my shoulders. And so, really, truly, all I had was my career. And so, no, I don't think that in the beginning of my career, this was something that was ever on my radar. I think that as we evolve as women, I think that as we grow more into ourselves, we're also more aware of expectations and pressure and societal expectations. And, we have this innate desire to be liked and to be accepted and to be, included and to feel like a part of something. And therefore, we end up saying yes to things that we maybe our soul and our values don't align with, but we say yes to them because we don't want to let people down and we don't want to disappoint people. And so I think that that question is different for every woman listening because, if you are a child-free woman living your life on your terms without the other pressures of what parenthood can bring, you may not experience burnout. And then you also might if you're somebody who really struggles with boundaries and saying no to people. So I personally didn't experience it until, my load of life got heavier. Um, but I think it depends on the kind of human you are.
Yeah, totally. There's
Mm.
a huge difference in life when it is just you as a single person and like you got all the time in the world and nobody else is relying on you and like you can just go all in. And I think that when I reflect on my journey, I think that's kind of what happened for me is like I was so all in. I didn't have kids, I wasn't married. I started getting like super busy and educating and traveling and doing all these things and then added in getting married and then added in the, kids and house and all of those things, but nothing else in my professional life really shifted until it was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore."
Right.
And
Well,
now
when you're young and or not even young, but when you don't have all of those other things going on, you can do a 10-hour booked out day and you can go home and you can grab dinner on the way home, go home, lay on the couch, rot until you go to bed and get up the next day. I mean, I can remember that season of my career probably for a good like 5 or 6 years, maybe even more, where like that was my whole world. I loved what I did. I got done up to the nines every day. I loved growing my book of business. I loved challenging myself. I loved learning and new techniques. And I don't know, I just had this like bold, audacious, like no F's given kind of an attitude where it was like, well, if you don't like me, go find a stylist who does. And I think as women, the more we're like hammered with like pressure and expectation, the more sensitive we become,
yeah.
right? And so um it's wild because that was my everything. And I literally thought like I could never imagine a life without being a hairdresser. And now in the season of life I'm like, and I'm sure we'll get there, but it's a very different experience for me now.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So there was a point where you were like, If I'm not a hairdresser, who am I?"
Yeah.
I feel that because that has been for me, that's been like the last 5 years really of
Mm.
dealing with that and being in a place where I was forced. So I had to have surgery, multiple surgeries, took like 3.5 years to get through, couldn't do it the way that I wanted to anymore. And so like, I chose to step back because I couldn't do the work in the same
Mhm.
way that I was. And so it felt forced, but I'm like you. I spent my whole childhood in my aunt's salon and then I moved to, the big city and went to hair school at 17. And so like that was who I was. So
Mhm.
tell me what that was like for you and how did that come up for you?
So I feel like obviously having kids and getting married and doing all those things shifted my career, extensively. I can actually remember being in beauty school and one of my teachers making a comment about, basement Betties and how like don't ever be a sellout, don't go be a basement Betty, which is so funny because as the world has evolved, like chair rental and booth rental and independent stylists, like that's kind of like the goal now, which is so funny because it was so like taboo before. And
Mhm.
so when I was pregnant with my first daughter, we lived a good 45 minutes from the salon that I worked at. And it was because I did live in the big city near, always in the downtown high-end salons. Then I met my husband and, I ended up moving and whatever. And I realized very quickly, pregnant with my daughter, that number one, taking an entire year off as a hairstylist is, for you new stylists listening, be prepared because that book of business that you've spent years building diminishes very quickly. And there's no way around that. You either have to choose what matters more to me, being the mom that I desire to be, if that is you that wants to be home, or my clientele. And for me, it was my children and still is my children first and foremost. And so I recognized very quickly that not only did I not want to go back to working, 8 to 10 hour days with an infant at home, but once I did the driving and, the back and forth and childcare, I was like, what am I working for? And I had to decide, do I care more about pleasing these clients, right? That are like, oh my gosh, you're leaving me, or raising my children. And again, like my kids will always win. But that was the moment where my husband was like, why don't we put a studio in the house? And
Mhm.
I really struggled with this because of the perceived image of being a quote unquote basement Betty. And I have been an independent stylist working out of my home on and off for the last 10 years because once I did that, I was like, there is no way I will ever go back to working in a salon again. There's no way. Now, the other side of that is I don't have hours. I work my schedule around my kids and my life, which means sometimes I still struggle with boundaries and not having an insane work schedule. And so I'm at a point in my career now where I'm a lot more intuitive, a lot more spiritual, a lot more aware of vibration. And I was the stylist before, was like, anybody who wants in my chair, sit, let's go, let's go. Whereas now it's about my energy and the energy that I'm absorbing from these clients. And so I'm in a season now where like, if I'm being really honest, I got a good handful that I would just like to just send away, and not because they're bad people, not because of anything, but simply because energetically I feel depleted when they've left. And
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
just not available for that anymore. I really, really value how I feel internally and not just physically.
Yeah. Oh, that's like you just hit the nail on the head on that one because that to me is one of the key reasons that beauty industry pros burn out. It's
Mm,
the I need clients, so I will take anybody who will come and pay me. And 50% of those people suck my soul by the end of the day. And that was me. I got to that place where I was taking, I mean, I was pretty fully booked, but I was kind of taking whoever, like my book wasn't full of people who were aligned with me as a human. They were soul suckers. And I found myself sitting in my car at the end of the day trying to figure out how the hell I was going to decompress and go home and still be a whole human for my family, for my young children. And that was, for me, that was the moment of like, okay, something has to change.
mhm,
But it's
for
really
sure.
easy to do in our industry because you want clients and you want money. And especially when you have not built up that clientele yet.
Yes.
Or, like you talked about, you've had a baby, you've taken time off. I was working for someone when I had my first daughter. And so I took advantage of being an employee and taking a whole year off. And knew I was gonna lose clients, but I probably lost like 75% of my clientele, which was fine. Like, I didn't go back full time. That was my choice, but it was big. So, yeah, it's
And I
just
and I think the type of salon you're in makes a difference when you do that. If I'm looking back on my career, I would have probably done things a little bit different when it came to preparing to have children, because there were seasons of my career where, like, I remember for about 3 years I worked in a salon in a mall, and that was a great experience because the walk-in clientele was massive. I learned so much because you have so many different clients in your chair, color corrections and basic colors and gray coverage, and you got everything under the sun as far as like requests. And so but I branched off and went out into a higher end salon where I was required to build my book of business with referrals, and we didn't get walk-ins. And so looking back, it would have made more sense to stay in an environment where there was a revolving door and I would have been able to take more time off.
Mhm.
However, in saying that, coming home was the best decision. And I was able to work when my husband was home and slowly build. And it's amazing how many of my clients actually followed me when I went home. But I want to touch on something that you said about, the energetic stuff and the clients. And I want to share an example of going against your intuition and going against like, listen, as women, we are like these magnetic superpowers of energy and intuition and knowing. And every time you choose to go against that, you're abandoning yourself. And these are the things that lead to burnout. So, and this is a recent story. So clearly I'm still learning the lessons of life.
Mhm.
But I had a friend reach out to me about 6 months ago, and she said, my aunt is looking for a stylist. She keeps asking where I go. She said, I have to warn you, she's a lot. Energetically, demand wise, she's a lot. And she said, I would not be offended in the least if you don't want to take her on. She said, here's what I would do. I'm going to connect you. She's going to tell you what she wants. Overquote her, like overquote her. And so I thought I overquoted her for what I typically charge, and she still came to me. Okay, fine. I thought, okay, no problem. First appointment, okay, fine. Then we build a little bit of a relationship, and I'm like, okay, I can kind of manage this energy a little bit. She's not bulldozing me as much. And after her last appointment a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to give examples because if it's stylists listening, they're going to get a good chuckle out of this. This is a client who, as I'm blow drying, is like touching and moving and like, um,
Uh-huh.
this is a client who doing a full head of back-to-back traditional foils. I have done the top half, so it processes, the lightest. And then I start at the back and I've got to pin up the back of her hair to get to the nape of her neck. And she's like, are you not foiling that? Yes, I am, but I need to do the underneath first, like questioning everything. This is a client who brings her own heat tools to style her hair when I'm done blow drying and anyways, we left this last appointment and I realized that no amount of money is worth how I feel through that appointment, and I will be terminating her. And I'm
Yeah.
simply going to tell her that I am reducing my client load and focusing on friends and family. She doesn't know who my friends are.
Yeah.
Don't ignore yourself because you will end up regretting it in the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that the boundaries piece is something that we all struggle with.
100%.
And even when you're aware and you're leaning into that, into, you know what, and it's like, it still comes up. You still have the situations where you're like, yeah, sure. Okay. I'll take that on. I'll give it a try. Can't be that bad. Should be fine. And you're like, what in the world?
Well, because as women, we don't want to hurt people. We don't want to let people down. We don't want to disappoint people. And whether you think you're a people pleaser or not, we all have some of that in us because we're humans and we don't want to hurt other humans. But sometimes you've got to prioritize your peace over somebody else's, because at the end of the day, that's all we have left is ourselves. And
Absolutely.
as somebody who has experienced extreme burnout, and I don't just mean seasons of like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I mean, like, I was mentally paralyzed for 2 years, like, couldn't take action on anything, was numb. Everything I loved, every part of my creativity, everything was like zapped. if you hear anything from this episode, like listen to yourself before you get to that point, because it is very scary when everything you know, everything you thought you were, you question
Mhm.
because you've abandoned yourself for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That fulfillment, the satisfaction, the joy that lit up about your life, it disappears when you're doing things for the wrong reasons. And so if you're taking on clients or you're putting up with behaviors or you're exhausting yourself so that other people are happy, so that they're getting their appointments, so that whatever, insert whatever, you're ultimately the one that pays the price. And you
Mhm.
have to ask, is that worth it?
Mhm.
Is that worth it? And it's not.
No. And I think really in the beginning, it takes a lot of time to build up a clientele. It just does. And anybody who tells you otherwise, like it just does.
Yeah.
And so I think that if we can sort of shift that mentality around, like the goal is to build a clientele, the goal is to fill the books, yes, but there are multiple ways to get there. One of them might maybe fast track that quote unquote full book a little faster, but it tends to be very unaligned. It tends to be those people who are taking advantage, who do not respect boundaries, who, you know, fill in the blank. And then when we get a little more intentional about the work we're doing, the work that we really love to do, and I understand that can take some time to figure out what that is. But when you figure out, like, okay, this is the work I love to do. I'm like a blonde queen. I'm the extension
Mhm.
queen. I'm whatever.
Same.
And you go in that direction,
Mhm.
you build up loyal customers, lifetime
Yeah.
clients, people who become like family, respect the boundaries and all the things. So,
Now,
um,
was that something that was taught when you began your career? Because I know for me, where I lived, there was nobody specializing. Like once in a blue moon, you'd come across a stylist in a big city who was just a colorist or just somebody who did cuts. Um, but we were very much taught to do everything.
oh yeah,
And I feel like now niching down really can be your superpower. There's also a big difference in building a clientele 20 years ago versus now. We didn't have social media.
I was just gonna
So
go there. Yeah,
social media is a double-edged sword. Sure, you
yep.
can build a massive clientele quickly, but you better be prepared to be, mastering social media and getting your photos right and marketing and getting in front of people and spending time on social media, engaging with accounts to draw people to you. Like there's so much that goes into that. So I know that when I started my career, the kind of the like rule of thumb was about 5 years to build a solid clientele. I think that's very different now. I think you could probably do it in 12 to 24 months, being super, super intentional, right? Gone are the days where we're taught to walk up to somebody with a business card. Oh my God, I love your hair. I'd love to see you in my chair. People
Yeah.
would like think you're nuts if you did that now. Um, but the social media doesn't just happen either.
No, no, it is very different because we didn't have social media
Mm-mm.
when we like that was just, I mean, no, there was no social media when
Yeah.
I started. That was not a thing, right? So that was something that our generation of stylists, really had to learn to. So I see these new students coming out of school and it's like, it's overwhelming. Like, I got to build a clientele and I got to have social media and I got to do this and da, 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 da. So let's talk about that for a second because we were talking prior to starting this episode about AI.
Mhm.
And AI is something that, ooh, I'm like, it's like stretching my edges. And I'm very much an old school person where like I still have a paper day planner because I like my book. I like seeing the things. So this conversation around AI, and when we're talking about the pressures as a new stylist, trying to build a clientele, everyone's like, ooh, AI, but like we can't be replaced by AI. And
Yep.
I think, and this is just my perspective and what I've seen out like in the field, is there is a really fine line between using things like AI and social media to build a business and being really fucking talented and letting that be what builds your business. And
Yeah.
there's this like shift, especially in the younger, where it's like, no, I can just have a really amazing social media, make my pictures look really, really good, tell everybody that I'm the balayage queen, but like my skill set is not actually there. The time,
So the social
effort, and
media,
energy. Yeah.
yeah, the social media will drive people into your chair, but they're not coming back. You're not getting repeat clients. Like my books have been closed for a year because I almost never lose a client anymore. And if I do, it's because they've moved. If I do, it's because they're not accessible for me like they can't get to me. And so yeah, like if your social media is phony baloney and doesn't reflect your actual skill set, you're going to constantly be working to fill your books. And so how do we develop those skill sets? Well, I love technology nowadays. There's YouTube videos, there's TikToks. You can learn so much online. Back in our day, Amy, we had to go to classes. We had to go to, the ABA. We had to go to continue our education, which still exists. Get in the freaking rooms with the people, right? This applies to any profession, but like now there's so much at your fingertips to be able to enhance your skills, but the fastest way to get better is by doing. So learn something and immediately apply it. Who can I use this on? Who can I try this on? Get your freaking mannequin out of the closet, go buy a new one, and don't ever think that you're too good, because the minute in the profession that you think you've got it figured out, you're toast. Like, because there's always evolution. There's always a new trend. There's always a new technique. And so where I do love AI and ChatGPT and all these things is the other day I had a client and she wanted to drastically change her color. And it was like, I love when a blonde is like, I want to do this. And they give you like, a root melt into like blonde ends and the dimensional with the browns. And I'm like, dude, you're going to be blonde again in 6 months. Like, why even bother? Anyway, I knew in my brain how I would approach this, but sometimes we like the advantage to being in a salon environment is you've got other stylists to kind of like bounce things off of. And so when you're an independent stylist, you lose that. And I think that's the one disadvantage to being an independent stylist is you don't have, when you're stumped on something or a formula, or you're just like, I think I would do it this way, but how do you anyway, I went into ChatGPT. I uploaded a photo of the client, uploaded a photo of her goal hair. And then I said, what technique would you use to accomplish this, this end result? And it was just validation for me because everything I already thought I was going to do was like, boom, 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 boom. And I was like, but how freaking cool that we have that ability to break it down at our fingertips. Now, where this is a disadvantage to you is as they break it down, they being, AI, if you don't know the technique they're telling you to do, you're still out of luck. So
Totally.
your skill is your personality as a hairdresser, and your skill is everything. Because in the beginning of your career, remember somebody saying like, if you're really magnetic and captivating and an energy that people love being in, you can be a mediocre hairdresser and people will come back. And then it gives you the ability to get better and better and better. But if you are dry and bland or constantly griping about yourself and your terrible life and you're mediocre, this is why some stylists have it easier than others. I think some stylists just have, so work on your personality, work on how you present to the world. Right? I was trained by an old school British stylist. I think she was in her 60s when I apprenticed for her. And I ended up going back and working for her for years and building to being like one of her top stylists and whatever. But she said, the client in your chair, they're not there to listen to you talk about you. They're there because this is about them. Get really good at redirecting the conversation back to them. Now, there's, we build relationships. Some of my clients have been with me for 17 years. They're going to know a little bit about my life. But I'm still really good at making, right? So sure, you can be skilled, but it's more than just what you can do with your hands.
I call it the restaurant effect is how I teach it. And it's like if you've ever been to a phenomenal restaurant, the food is incredible. It's like melts in your mouth, so lovely. But your waiter is as dry as they come and does not pay any attention to you and is irritated by you being there. And you're never going back.
No.
But the restaurant, which has like decent food, like it's fine. But there's that one server who like knocks your socks off and makes you feel like a queen when you're there. That's the restaurant you're going back to. And
Yeah.
it's very much the same in our industry. Yes, you need to know what you're doing. Yes, you need to be able to produce, but you need to be the human who makes them feel seen and heard and beautiful and all of the things, right?
A really great real life example of this is the difference between Tim Hortons and Starbucks.
Mhm.
If you go sit in the Tim Hortons line and you're sitting there for 5 minutes for a coffee, you're going to be pissed. You have no problem doing that in the Starbucks line because you're getting an experience where the barista is going to smile at you. They're going to call you by name. They're going to make you feel like the most important patron that walked in the door that day. Not just here's your coffee in your bag. I'll have a great day, right? Another restaurant that does what you're saying right here really well is the Keg. If you've ever been to the Keg, it is an experience. The food is not, it's not Michelin quality food. It's some beef and some veg. But from the minute you walk in the door, it's an experience, and people will pay more. People will pay for how you make them feel. I will
Absolutely.
gladly go spend $6 on a drink at Starbucks versus $3 at Tim Hortons and wait double the time for it because of the branding and the experience they've built. And so being a stylist is not just about doing hair.
No, no, it's the whole experience. We're creating
Mhm.
experiences for people.
Mhm.
Okay, girl, tell me about so you had a whole 360 in your life. Now you are helping women break free from this cycle. Tell me about that work. Tell me what that looks like.
Oh my gosh. So I've done a lot of things in my career, right? I haven't just been a hairstylist. I have been in marketing and sales online, partnered with a couple wellness companies. I've built massive businesses, massive teams. I have worked with some incredible top performing people. I've worked with people making multiple 6 and 7 figures. So many different women generally I don't relate to men. Sorry. I love men. I don't relate to them. Um, but the common thing that I see is this constant chase, this constant hustle. And the thing that always comes up with these women is like something's missing. Like I've ticked all the boxes, I've done all the things, but like when am I going to feel like I've arrived? When am I going to feel like they're chasing something that they don't even know what it is? And so, what is it all for if you don't actually have fulfillment? If you're not actually fully satisfied? If you actually don't have any ability to rest and to be alive in your life, then it's for nothing. It's for show. And that's what it comes down to is a lot of what we are doing in our lives is we get caught up with this. And I hate to say keeping up with the Joneses, but when we take a giant step back from looking objectively at what we do and why we do it. If I were to say to a woman in my space right now, why are you in your career? Well, because I can make a lot of money. Okay, why do you want a lot of money? Well, because I want to buy a bigger house. Why do you want a bigger house? Well, we need more space. Okay, great. Why do you need more space? And, sometimes it comes down to, like, are we trying to prove something to other people? Or like me, I come from a lower middle class family where we struggled a lot in my childhood. And I almost had this like chip on my shoulder of like, I need to prove that I can have more, do more, be more. And it came at the expense of my well being. And so over and over and over again, I would say that 99% of the high achieving, high producing, ambitious women that I work with, that I have in my world, that I've worked with in the past, they are all constantly on, constantly doing, constantly producing. And when asked, who are you? Who are you? When you strip away the titles, the ranks, the promotions, the income, the mom, the wife, all of it. Who are you? Who are you? They have no idea. And that's not okay, because anything at any given moment can be taken from you. You know, Amy, you touched on the fact that like you've had some serious health stuff. I personally, again, another thing we're going through, I'm slowly transitioning out of the hair world permanently right now because I have arthritis in my hands and my wrists. And I refuse to sacrifice my mobility for my clients, right? I apologize if you hear my dogs barking. Like I refuse. And so unfortunately, as women, we keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And then we get to this point in our life where we're still not fulfilled. And then we pivot either career-wise, or we pivot in some drastic way in our life and we go chase something else to end up still feeling empty. And so a lot of the work that I do with these women is like, we've got to rewire that self-worth. We have to rewire the identity of who you think you need to be, right? I can tell you right now in my life, I've made way more money in different seasons of my life. I have had way more experiences and trips and shopping and all these things. I've had way more recognition. I've had way more praise, all this stuff. But I've never been so like deeply alive in my life than I am right now, because I'm not trying to prove anything to people. I'm not showing up. I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you think that I'm successful or not. I really don't give a shit. I don't. And it's taken me a long time to get here. And so a lot of high achieving women aren't doing it for the right reasons. And I'm not here to tell you not to have big goals and big dreams and big vision. I am the Delulu crazy girl. I will always be chasing more, but from a place of like real alignment and fulfillment. And it's for me, and it's not to prove anything to anybody else, because I don't owe anybody else an explanation.
Mm. You guys let that land for a second. Like, really let that sink in, that you really need to figure out who you are. What do you really desire, and why? Like, we're missing the why. Like, why do you want those things? What happens when you have those things? And what are you sacrificing for that? And we've really missed that.
And it's important to, it's not even, it's about, what do I want? Why do I want it? Whatever. But how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? One of my clients, she actually said to me, we were catching up a while back, and she said, one of the most profound things that has stayed with me, Dayna, from working with you was you asked me how I wanted to feel every day. And then we went really deep on it. I said, what do you want your days to look like? Don't tell me that you want to get up at 5 a.m., cram in your workout if you even do that for yourself, and then bust your ass all day for everybody else, come home, burnt out, and get up and do it again. I'm sorry. Nobody actually wants to do that. They think they have to. And so we rewired backwards, like what she wanted her days in her life to look like. And sometimes that requires some major shifts. Sometimes you've got to completely pivot your career. Sometimes it's not easy, but I'll tell you, it's freaking worth it, because I know that when I was in, my success season, that's not even fair to say, because I still feel wildly successful right now, but I did not like how I felt. I felt like I was like vibrating all the time, and not in a good way. And so if you don't know who you are, when you strip all that stuff away and you don't feel how you want to feel most days, because come on, we're human and we live human lives. Like, there's going to be days that are just shit. It is what it is. But that's the first thing you need to recognition. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. But when you recognize that, then you can work it backwards and say, okay, what needs to shift? What needs to shift? Right? Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for everybody else? And so here's your permission. Go do the thing. Go do it. And other people don't have to understand. It's not theirs to understand. We have to stop trying to prove ourselves to people that we wouldn't even want to trade places with. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say I am in my most misunderstood season from like the people around me. And I've never felt more like myself because it's unapologetic and I'm doing this for me and not anybody else. And it is a shift and it's hard and it takes intention and showing up every day and doing the work for me. But like, I relate to that. Like, this season of life
Mhm.
feels like I have come alive. And I'm
Yeah.
the most misunderstood. I'm sure everyone in my world that has been here for the last 10 years is like, what in the hell is going on with her? Is she okay? Like, what's happening? And that's fine because it's not for them to get.
No, no. And we spend so much of our lives trying to make people get us.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in the same season, not surprising, in a different way than you, but like the exact same thing. And it's like, when you get to a place where you are completely unapologetic AF, like you are just like, I know who I am. I know my worth in this world. I am certain about what I want and where I'm going. And I can love you and not agree with you. And you can love me and not understand, but I trust me. I've got me. And I can't go through this life and look back wondering what would have happened if I had tried this thing or went this way. And so I've a great example. I've slowly started telling my clients, like, I'm very close to transitioning out. Like, I value my hands and my wrists and I can't replace them. Just like we can't be replaced as stylists by technology and AI. Like, we have a job that just computers can't do. Thank goodness. But like, I also don't get another pair of hands and wrists, and I'm not even 40. So if you think that I'm going to sacrifice my mobility for the rest of my life so that you have the stylist that you love, how selfish of you. But I have had a few clients that are like, oh, well, you'll still do my hair, right? Like, you'll still take a couple clients. And I'm like, no, no. I'll do my
You're
mom's hair.
not hearing me.
I'll do my kids' hair. I'll do
Yeah.
my bestie's hair. But like, no, I'm sorry. But I value me more than I value you. Now, obviously, I don't say it like that because, I got a little bit attacked, but my God, it is such a freeing feeling as a woman when you finally let go of expectation. And when you finally start doing what is aligned and right for you,
Yeah.
right? When you actually figure out what you value in this life. And for those of you that have never done a values assessment, go online. Heck, go use ChatGPT and say, I really want to figure out what my 5 core values are. Help me figure them out. You will identify your values. Sometimes that's time freedom, it's financial stability, it's relationships, it's all these different things. And often we can identify them and then very easily see where we're acting out of alignment of them. That is like your sure pathway to burnout, people pleasing, burnout, like going against yourself, abandoning yourself, burnout. Like, it all leads to the same thing. I say to my husband all the time, I'm like, we still have to live our lives. Like, my girls are 8 and 10. And I'm like, I will be damned if I get to where they're grown and I don't even know who I am anymore. I love them. And I am a very involved, very present, very hands-on mom. That's why I love the work that I do, because I get to be present and be mom. Like, my kids are home right now. But I'm not about to sacrifice all of who I am in the process.
No.
Right.
So
And
potent.
so
So needed.
I
Like
think
the
women,
work you're
as
doing.
women, we just need to take back our freaking power.
Yeah.
Like, we just, it's so easy to give it to other people, but men don't do that. They're bulldogs in their careers. They just go after it. They do the thing. They're not worried about pissing people off.
And nobody questions them, but we
No, that's a
right?
whole podcast
That's a
episode.
whole that's a whole other
Started.
episode.
But like,
We might need a whole
no,
series just you and I, just like an Amy
we
and
could
Dana riff.
we could totally do that. But like, as a stylist, getting back to that, because I know we're going to wrap up shortly, but have really good boundaries from day one. Because the longer you go through your career without boundaries, and I'll give some examples of boundaries in a second, but the longer you don't have them, the harder it is to implement. And so let me give you a real world hairstylist example. You've got a client that shows up 10 to 15 minutes late every freaking time. Are you accommodating their entire appointment? Or are you saying to them, hey, Stace, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you made it. I'm so glad you're safe. But because you were 15 minutes late today, I'm not actually going to be able to give you a blowout. You're going to have to leave wet. Or I'm going to have to just give you a cut and not your color today. You do that once, they're going to learn really quickly. Oh, yeah. Right? If you continue to accommodate them, they are not going to show up on time. People treat us how we allow them to. And so if you're new into the profession or even not, start implementing boundaries. I am not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable. Period. End of story, because you're going to feel like you're disappointing people. But the boundaries aren't for them, they're for you. And so the sooner you do it, the better clients you'll have because they'll respect you. And the better you'll feel and the less likely you'll be to burn out because you've implemented them from day one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And boundaries can also, for people who are like, I don't know what boundaries are. They're rules. They're rules that you live by. They're rules that you run your business by.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And I always say this, and it's like, let this land. The only people upset by you putting in boundaries are the ones who benefit from you having none.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And then who's the one that is suffering the consequences if there's no boundaries? Us, yeah. Right?
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Dayna, where are you hanging out online? How do our friends listening find you?
Well, I am mostly over on Instagram. So it's at Dayna Renee Co. So it's DaynaReneeCo. I am also kind of dabbling over on TikTok under the Worthy Woman Project. I have my own podcast called the Worthy Woman Project. I think there's like 6 episodes on there because we are a baby podcaster and we're so excited about this. And I mean, I'm on Facebook, but that's, I'd rather not hang out there. I feel like we've evolved out of that space. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
You guys, we will link all of that for you. Please go give Dayna a follow, reach out, say hi, let her know what you loved about this episode. And if you just feel like she is your soul human and in line with what you need and like speaking to you today, reach out, find out how you can work with Dayna. She's an incredible human. And I am so grateful that our worlds have collided and connected. And I feel like we might need to do this again.
I agree.
My loves, this has been another episode of the Savvy Stylist Podcast. Thank you, Dayna, so much for being here. This has been such a juicy conversation. If you watched this episode, go ahead, take a screenshot, share it online, tag both of us. Let us know what you loved. Yeah, and we will see you on the next episode. Have an amazing day, friends. Mwah.